Hey, Cinemaniacs. Welcome back to the Den of Sin. This is your co-host, Devin, and I've got my fearless co-host, James, with me today. How you doing, James?
I'm a fearless vampire hunter. I'm good. It's been a crazy week for the United States, but very interesting times we're living in.
I was going to say, we promised to come back if society didn't self-destruct. I think we narrowly
Every day's
missed.
a gamble at this point.
Yeah. So far, so good.
Civil War Part 2. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Just excited to talk movies. This is always my favorite thing. So
yeah, me too. This is definitely a bright spot. We are concluding our examination of time travel movies, which is something that we had picked somewhat as a relief from exactly what's going on in the world right now, because time travel movies, even the headier ones, tend to just be a little bit more fun. There was one fun fact before we get into the new crop of movies here. There was something I neglected to mention last week that tied three of the movies we talked about last week together in a very head-scratching way. Did you know that Back to the Future, Time After Time, and Time Rider, The Adventure of Lyle Swan, for whatever reason, unconnected to one another, chose November 5th to be the day that they travel back to. Different years in each of them, but each one of them specifically, they travel back to November 5th. So I'm a little curious, is there something that they're hiding from us, or?
That's weird as hell, man.
Right?
How specific.
I might have to see what I can do about demanding an answer to that.
You don't want to, I mean, if, I don't want to lose you, Devin. Don't upset the Illuminati too much.
No, and I don't want to upset Robert Zemeckis either, but I'm very curious. Those writers, Zemeckis and Gale did Back to the Future, and Michael Nesmith did Time Rider, and I believe Nicholas Meyer wrote Time After Time himself. I would think that maybe those people might be approachable on Twitter. Don't think this is a question they're asked very often. So let's test the theory. Let's see if we can get just one of them to answer. Did they do that as a tribute to something else, or what made them pick November 5th? Because that's incredibly specific.
And you're sure it's just those three time travel movies? That date doesn't pop up in any others?
Those are the only three that popped up on my radar. It could be that this is a thing. They could be paying tribute to a book that I know nothing about. I don't know. But all three very different styles of time travel movies too. So
I can't imagine Time Rider is based off of, it's paying homage to anything. Like maybe it's some, it's H.G. Lewis. Or H.G. Lewis, Herschel Gordon Lewis, H.G. Wells tribute of some kind. But speaking of H.G. Wells, though.
Yes, speaking of H.G. Wells, we should definitely say something about George Pal's famous production of H.G. Wells' novel, The Time Machine. There have been other versions of The Time Machine as well, but let's face it, George Pal's 1960 version is what people think of when you bring up The Time Machine. Did you grow up with this one, James?
I didn't grow up with it. They played it a lot on Channel 13 on the Sunday night movie or whatever, the Sunday matinee movie, whatever. It did pop up a lot during my childhood, and I do. The only thing I can remember about it specifically is the Morlocks and the very distinct design of the Morlocks. Most of the time, if I'm going to pay attention to anything, it's going to be the monsters, the mutants, or villains, or the monsters, or the freaks of the movie. I remember liking it as a kid, but I've never read the Herschel Gordon. I haven't said Herschel Gordon Lewis again. Jesus Christ!
It's the Godfather of gore. We're talking about the Godfather of time travel.
Exactly, but yeah, I mean, I've never read any H.G. Wells stories, so I'm not by no means an expert. I know the basic overall plot of The Time Machine, but I can't recall too much about it.
I read a lot of H.G. Lewis growing up, but
H.G. Lewis too? I did it to you. It's my fault.
You cursed me. I started watching H.G. Lewis movies when I was maybe in middle school, but when I was younger than that, and I was not seeking out Blood Feast and Wizard of Gore, I was seeking out fun sort of time travel stories and science fiction stories, and I did follow H.G. Wells quite a bit. In fact, H.G. Wells is, in a very small way, a character in a script that I've written before, which is actually about Orson Welles, but everyone knows that Orson Welles and H.G. Wells did cross paths rather famously, not for The Time Machine, but for War of the Worlds. But most of my memories of reading those books have honestly kind of gone the way of The Summer Breeze itself. I don't remember very much. I remember the movie more than I remember the book. of the Time Machine. I knew you would mention the Morlocks, though, because you may not know this, but the entire cast of Morlocks was professional wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that specifically, but if you've seen the movie, they're all their builds and stuff. They needed brawny, beefy dudes. So yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, this was kind of pre Hulk Hogan, any of those guys, and more like toward Johnson's age when wrestlers were less jacked and more just bulky.
Yeah, just beefy. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is like dudes, even like the Bruno Sammartinos and stuff. He was pretty well built, not necessarily the definite, like, what a weird tangent, but they weren't like the bodybuilder looking guys. They're more like the powerful, athletic looking guys. And they had like these huge, manly, burly frames or whatever, which a lot of them were legitimate college athletes and stuff. A lot of them were just fat guys too. I mean, there's tons of those, the Haystacks, Calhouns of the world. But yeah, a lot of them though. But again, you're Tor Johnson, you're Swedish Angels, you're sort of just beefy dudes. Yeah.
And you can tell if you ever do get a chance to see the movie again, and I recommend it because stylistically, the story is what the story is. It's actually a very simple story, and there's not really anything too deep to it. But the visual style that George Powell brings to it is really interesting. And then when you get to the Morlocks, of course, they're all kind of doing slowed down wrestling moves. So if you watch it again, see if you can spot the actual moves that were popular back then.
I'll write down every single one I know.
I want a list. But there's other angles to the time travel mythology, or I guess it's not a mythology, but there's other time travel type stories. The Time Machine is about the time travel itself, but there's actually a lot of love stories that are made out of time travel stories. I don't know if you have any particular favorites. There's a number of them that just really weren't my cup of tea, so to speak. Things like Forever Young with Mel Gibson and Jamie Lee Curtis was one of them.
I mean, it's funny because we're kind of doing a little bit of research. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot this was sort of, it wasn't a terrible movie, but the movie When We First Met with Adam Devine from Workaholics, who I am weirdly a fan of. I don't, there's something about him. He's very frat boy, frat bro, douche bro kind of dude, but he's still fun. I think he's legitimately funny, but it was actually a pretty sweet little movie. It was a pretty little heartwarming movie. The time travel aspect suits romance movies so well because so much of what is the heartache of like true romance is like love's lost, and so missed opportunities, meet cutes, all those sort of things, or there's an element of being able to sort of go back and fix that, or if only I had a time machine I wouldn't make that mistake again, and that sort of falls really deeply into what makes romance films appealing, or what makes those kind of stories work for people. I know there's one you really want to talk about specifically.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and bring that one up then.
I will say though, real quick before you go on, this was the one movie, because I have seen it. My mom was a fan of this movie. I feel like I say that a lot in this podcast. My mom was a fan of the movie, but again, my mom had a huge impact on me, especially cinematically, which is very odd if you know my taste in movies. But
I also know your mother, so it makes sense to me, and I think our listeners enjoy it. I like
it's
knowing.
And the thing is, to me, it's like it's the one thing. Like everybody sort of connects with people in a different way, and for me, it was the thing where I just always thought my mom had really great taste as a kid. Like if she liked something, it was usually something I liked too. But yeah, she was a big fan of romance movies and really well done movies, and she was particularly a fan of this. And she was actually a fan of the cast, which I'll let you sort of talk about.
Okay, well, the film is Somewhere in Time, which I'm sure is not a surprise to most of our listeners that this would be my favorite romance story. Going back and rewatching it, and I've rewatched it several times, the story's not really particularly deep. It's a rather straightforward sort of love story. Oftentimes I've thought of like, why exactly is this my favorite romance movie, considering there's not so much to it. But I think a lot of it has to do with the performances. You've got Christopher Reeve as the lead, and Jane Seymour, who is a fantastic actress who at first kind of got sort of shoehorned as a Bond girl, and then she had Dr. Quinn. And I really don't think that she's, even though she has a cult following, I don't think that she's ever been given the role that really, that brought her the appreciation that she deserves. You could argue maybe that this is it. It's an interesting time travel story because it does not involve a time machine at all. And it doesn't involve spells or curses or any kind of such thing. There's no potion. It's all done in the mind. And I think maybe that's why it stuck in my mind when I was young, was because, well, if time travel really exists, this is maybe the most approachable way to imagine that it could happen for one of us. It's a sort of self-hypnosis. For anyone that hasn't seen the film, Christopher Reeve plays Richard Collier. He's a playwright, and at his opening night of his first major play, an old woman approaches him backstage while they're all celebrating, with a very young William H. Macy, by the way. It was his first film, and if you blink, you'll miss him. But this old woman approaches Christopher Reeve and hands him a pocket watch and says the words, "Come back to me." And then she just walks away, and everyone's kind of stunned and whatever, but they get back to their partying. It's just one of those moments. And we jump forward just a couple of years in the future, and he is now a successful playwright with a career out of it. And he's kind of hit that sort of sophomore slump where he's losing his heat fast, and he decides to take a long weekend and just kind of drive off and see where he ends up. And he ends up on Micmac Island, which is a real place, and the Grand Hotel, which is also a real place. They hold conventions for somewhere in time there. Interesting enough, you can't actually drive cars there, so they had to break their own rules. I think it's the only time Micmac Island has ever broken the rule of allowing travel by car. Yeah, and if you watch it, it's not used much. I mean, you basically see Christopher Reeve driving up to the front of the hotel, and there's not much else in it involving cars. But as Christopher Reeve arrives at the hotel, he gets his room, he kind of gets his bearings, and he goes into like a hall of history, a little museum for the hotel. And he sees a picture on the wall of this beautiful actress who had performed there in 1912. And he falls in love with the picture. He becomes obsessed, starts studying everything he can find about this actress, whose name is Elise McKenna. And finally, he finds the last photograph ever taken of her. And lo and behold, it's the woman who came up to him backstage at his first play and gave him the watch and said, "Come back to me." So now he's super obsessed. And of course, movie magic, the way these kinds of stories go. Of course, he had a college professor who had once claimed to have gone back in time himself using this particular method. So he goes and he gets the information from that college professor, who tells him to be careful and tells him how exhausting it is and how he only made it back to, I think it was the era of the Spanish Inquisition or something. And he was only there for seconds, and then it went away. So Collier becomes obsessed with going back to the hotel and using the hotel itself kind of as his time device, since the hotel existed in the time he's traveling to, 1912. And he goes back and he finds her, and then it's a struggle. They instantly have chemistry once Christopher Reeve is back in 1912, but Christopher Plummer plays Jane Seymour's manager, who is dead set against these two ever ending up together. And so once he's actually gotten past the hurdle of time travel, now he's got a manager to deal with. And I don't want to give away the ending, except to say that it's one of the more impactful parts of the film. But it had a big influence on me as a kid. And it also, I think, being really young when I saw it, I remember being sick home from elementary school, and it was on TV. And what caught my attention was that it was Superman. And I think it was one of the first movies that kind of showed me that the superhero could also be a romantic lead, and that it, as an acting choice, you don't always have to play the guy that can fly. And I think that was a big deal to me as a kid in understanding what actors do.
Yeah, and I feel like, we could really at some point really dive into not just specifically how playing Superman affected Christopher Reeve's career. Christopher Reeves is a fantastic actor. I feel like he had such a humanity to him. He had such a gentle warmth to it, like a genuine warmth to him that came across in his roles, not just as Superman, but across his career. But I feel like in the same way that Adam West was typecast as Batman, the same way that William Shatner was typecast as Captain Kirk to a certain degree, there was a time where you played these big iconic roles and you sort of, especially if they were a genre, you couldn't really break out of it. And I do think, thankfully, in today's world, that's not necessarily an issue anymore. I think you can go from being like the star of a tentpole franchise superhero movie to having a career as a more diverse career as an actor. But I feel like Chris Reeve was sort of pigeonholed as Superman when he definitely, and you and I, very adamant about him being the most perfect cinematic Superman of all time. Perfect. He's iconic in that character. And so rightfully so, he should go down in history as being remembered as the best Superman. But I feel like it did hurt his career and he didn't really get the fair shake he could have. But that is an unfortunate part of Hollywood, especially in the past, where if people saw you as this iconic character, oftentimes those actors struggled with being, typecast and trying to break out of that. He was a very likable star. I feel bad that he didn't have the career maybe that he should have or deserved to have. But it's a great movie.
Thank goodness we got what we got, though. I mean, the first couple Supermans were fantastic. The last couple of Supermans are at least fun. Somewhere in Time, Death Trap. There's enough Christopher Reeve out there to have a full appreciation of the man, and I'm happy for that. And I will say, Somewhere in Time was my gateway to that, to appreciating him as a kid and breaking the stereotype in my own mind, which is really what the way to beat stereotyping. It's got to be a 50-50. The audience has to meet that actor halfway. You got to be able to crack your own mind to say, like, I can see that person doing that.
Yeah.
And I hope other people had similar experiences with Somewhere in Time, kind of understanding, like, oh, I get it. These are actors and he really doesn't fly. And that's not all he's capable of doing. He's just so heartbreaking in this. And he's so eager at first. And then when he gets there and it's not exactly how he wanted, you run through the gamut of emotions with him. His part in particular in that film is extremely emotional, and he's inviting you to go along on that ride with him, and he really does carry you. And it doesn't hurt that it's based on a short story by Richard Matheson, who is one of the greatest science fiction writers of all time. So
one of the most influential writers of all time, and most contemporary, film fans most people don't know his influence, the things that he wrote that, went on to influence pop culture in general, but specifically cinema, 17 different remakes of different novels he's written and stories he's written. One romantic comedy or one romantic science fiction-y time travel-y movie that I am a huge fan of is Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris.
Oh yes, I love that one.
We've talked in this podcast before that yes, he's not the most likable guy as a human being. At some point, you have to separate the art from the artist. I can understand people even having criticisms of his work, because there are legitimate criticisms that he goes to the same well thematically a lot, that he writes himself into all of his movies. But the thing is, regardless of all of those criticisms being, having some validity, he's such an artist and such of a singular mind that he still makes really fun, compelling, interesting, witty, entertaining even movies. Midnight in Paris is a perfect example. Yes, it's another nebbish. I mean, all these characters are basically iterations of Woody Allen. We all know that. But this one is just it's so charming. And I actually think, even though like a lot of times they'll cast guys who sort of have the same aura as him as far as like this kind of look with Midnight in Paris, I feel like Owen Wilson definitely doesn't. Nothing about Owen Wilson normally reminds you of Woody Allen, but he played to Owen Wilson's strength. I think it's one of my favorite Owen Wilson performances. And Owen Wilson really captured what the writing of Woody Allen, but it's such a great premise of, you think you're such a fan of like bygone eras, you romanticize bygone eras. I'm a big fan of nostalgia and anachronistic things like, vinyl records and like, I get all of that stuff. There's a sense of romance to that idea that, I wish I could live in, the roaring 20s, whatever. And what the film, is basically saying is like, that's just live, like, be happy to like, live in your contemporary society. And which is a funny point that Woody Allen makes, it because you sort of see Woody Allen as this sort of, in his old timey jazz band. And
yeah,
it's a very charming movie with a great cast, with really great performances, sort of popping through different eras of time and meeting famous people, famous, artists and writers and stuff, and Owen Wilson sort of interacting with them and stuff. And it's very charming. And one thing is too, like, he, at one point, obviously Woody Allen had his love affair with New York. Obviously most of his beloved movies are all love letters to New York. But in the latter half of his career, he changed that to Paris. And one thing that Woody Allen has been able to do, even with the, some of the greatest movies ever made are, there's a lot of brilliant French films, but Woody Allen captures this sort of quiet beauty to Paris that even other French films, I don't think, have been able to replicate or still capture. Just a certain facet of like a quiet Paris night or whatever. But so there's a romance to the movie anyway. It's just like, if you're just the cinematography, locations that he films in, it's a very charming movie. It gets a lot of hate nowadays because it just, anything with Woody Allen there's a hyper, again, I don't want to we're not going to get into the politics of Woody Allen and who he is, but people just want to hate on him, and again, I wouldn't ever argue that you have to be a Woody Allen fan, but I mean, separating the artist from the art from the artist. I feel like, when Midnight in Paris is I actually probably think it's the last truly brilliant Woody Allen movie. And I really like Woody Allen. Like, even his movies that I feel like are mediocre are still better than 95% of other movies I'll see in the same given year. So
agreed. And he was a huge influence on my writing style as well. It's the whole scandal around Woody Allen. It's I hate for it to be a deal breaker on anything. If somebody doesn't like Woody Allen movies, I totally get it. I'm not gonna just tell me you don't like Woody Allen movies and I'll stop talking about them. But to ignore the fact that I was so incredibly influenced by his particular style in terms of my own writing, I can't talk about my own writing without, basically I would just have to steal everything from Woody Allen and not give him credit in order to continue being a writer. But Midnight in Paris, I agree with you. I think it may be his last masterpiece. It's the last one that I really loved, and I haven't seen a lot of his later stuff just partly because it does leave a bad taste in my mouth, but I'm able to return to the stuff that I'd seen before because I can latch that onto memories of seeing it before. And
he
that
might
one in
be actually a
particular,
filmmaker who I've literally seen and he's a prolific filmmaker. I think I've seen everything he's ever done. Even Match Point.
I like Match Point. I thought Match Point was really good.
Match Point is great, and I feel like it's a lot of people like at the time were sort of surprised that he still had it in him. But I feel like it's like he's done movie, like he'll do a funny, witty, dialogue heavy movie, and then he'll do sort of a more mature, intrigue laden, more dramatic, like a Hannah and her sisters type of movie. And I think he does both brilliantly, and I think he's consistently do that, but he's just done them so much that you sort of take for granted. I do think that his weakest one for me overall, which was weird because it was starring Larry David, who is probably the most truly Woody Allen type guy to ever, step foot into that type of role. It just wasn't a great cast too. It didn't.
I was really disappointed. That one's called Whatever Works. I was very disappointed with that because of that same sort of thing. Like, oh my God, Larry David doing Woody Allen. How can this fail? I think it was too much of whatever it is. Whatever it is that we liked about those two personalities coming together was exactly what made it not work, most likely. Not that they have conflicting styles per se, although, Larry David is just louder as a personality.
They're definitely different people. Like their vibe is different, but ultimately the overthinking, the difference between Larry David as a persona, not the person, because obviously he's not the characters he plays, but Larry David characters project outward and Woody Allen projects inward. Woody Allen is all about I suck, nobody likes me. He's very neurotic and very self-deprecating, where Larry David is just, he thinks everybody else is an idiot, and how come, but I thought that dichotomy was interesting.
Do you happen to know how long Midnight in Paris was kicking around as a screenplay in Hollywood?
I mean, I didn't before you, but I'm going to hazard a guess and say 30 years, but.
Well, let's, can you guess what actor called Woody Allen personally because he wanted to play a part in this movie? In particular, he wanted to play the lead. I'm setting you up because you're probably not going to guess it, but it does indicate.
I'll just pull randomly and I'll say, I don't know. I can't think. I have not. I've tried to think of something witty and I don't have anything.
This script was kicking around so long before Woody Allen actually shot it that Cary Grant wanted to play the lead.
I almost went something that old as a joke, but oh wow.
Cary Grant apparently really wanted to work with Woody Allen and called him and asked to play the lead in Midnight in Paris. So I don't know exactly. I mean, Woody Allen was a mover and a shaker in terms of getting movies done. So I don't know what held up that script for that many decades, but that's how far. And I'm sure that the script that Cary Grant read was extraordinarily different from the script that was finally produced. But I just thought that was interesting. And I've been kind of exploring Cary Grant lately. He's someone that I've always appreciated, and I've seen a lot of the biggies, but I've missed a lot of the in-between stuff, and I'm kind of going back and checking that out. That's how I discovered this fun fact to begin with. So I just wanted to get that in there. What's another one that's meant something to you, James, either positive or negative?
Well, so there are two time travel movies that sort of have a romance element to it that people love, that they're diehard fans of, and two, I am. One's one of the worst, most infuriating movies I've ever seen in the theater.
I have no idea what you're going to say right now. I'm actually kind of excited.
The first is Donnie Darko. I will say, I don't hate Donnie Darko. Weirdly for the listeners, I have a twin brother who actually has a tattoo of this movie. He's such a fan of it at the time. I feel like it is a movie that is interesting, definitely has its strong points. It definitely has things about it that are interesting. I think the soundtrack is great. I think there's definitely strong elements, but I do think if you investigate too long onto it, it does sort of fall apart and does sort of collapse in on its own logic. I can sort of also say Richard Kelly's career definitely has sort of proven me right as far as hasn't really done anything really of substance that sort of caught on. It is a cult classic. Again, there is things about it I like, but the one I truly despise from a director who I find, we'll say, polarizing at best is The Fountain. Now, it was well known that that Darren Aronofsky was making The Fountain. I don't know if I saw it with you, but it was definitely a movie that we were all like super excited to see when it was coming out.
I had no feelings for it when it came out. I had like zero interest, so it couldn't have been with me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is you're one of the smart ones. Okay, look, Darren Aronofsky is an interesting filmmaker. He does make movies that are at least interesting.
Some of them are amongst my favorites of the last 10 years, but some of them, exactly. His films have a tendency to sort of aim for the stars. Like he really wants to do something, have some or huge statement about life, or he has a lot of his films are very ambitious, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And sometimes it works and sometimes they don't. And his films are super polarizing. Mother, for instance, people either loved or hated it. I personally love it. Once you find out sort of what it's about, it becomes almost like, wow, I can't believe I didn't think about this. Unless you go into knowing sort of what it's a reference to and what it's an allegory to. Once you learn it, you're like, oh shit, yeah, that makes total sense. But it's a brilliantly obtuse film. But again, we've got to come up with a reason to talk about Mother sometime, because I would love to go into that one a little bit further. I don't think the place is here, but
no. But let's talk about The Fountain. The Fountain was supposed to be, when he had done Requiem for a Dream, like he was making movies people were very excited about. So I think the problem with this is that maybe it was also a case of heightened expectations, like he wasn't gonna. But look, it's just a bad movie. It's slow, it's boring, it's style over substance. People talk shit on, and I'm not even going to try to defend it as a movie, but people talk about Malick's, was it Tree of Life? Tree of Life, right?
Yeah.
As far as how self-indulgent that movie is, how it's like just a fucking jerk fest.
I don't find self-indulgence. That's what art is in so many ways.
Well, it's funny. This is a whole topic we could also talk about, because I also don't believe, as an artist, you have to be relatively up your own ass if you really want to say something of value. Like, I feel like you have to really trust yourself and really want to explore your own ideas. Like, but it just either you take a gamble with that and either it works or it doesn't.
The Fountain, it did not work.
No, it was just trying to be so. And the thing is, it had a great cast, but it just, I remember coming out of the theater and some people were like, "Oh, this is the most brilliant movie I ever saw." And I was like, "That movie's fucking dog shit." It's like it's trying so hard to be this like epic, grand statements about love, and it's like, no, man, the movie's fucking. It missed the mark huge, but it's become one of those movies that's super polarizing, where people either love it or they hate it. Which I feel like if you go through his whole filmography, is sort of what he's known for. Like people either love him or they fucking hate him. So.
I can take him or leave him. I love The Wrestler, but there's no chance I'm ever going to watch Noah.
Yeah, say exactly.
Perfect. I can't really champion him because so much of his stuff. I mean, with a lot of filmmakers, like I would have said at one point, Woody Allen was like this. I don't love every Woody Allen movie, but I do tend to find something about each one of them. But there's always an excitement going in of like, okay, is this going to be one of the great ones? Aronofsky, for whatever reason, I'll go see if it interests me. But if I'm not even going to give Noah a chance, I'm not going to, I just already know it has nothing to serve me. Another filmmaker who's like that, and we've discussed him before, and I'm actually going somewhere with this. We're talking about time travel. And we're talking about from 2020. People are going to want to know what we think about Tenet, and I'm going to tell you right now, I did not see Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I don't intend to watch Christopher Nolan's Tenet. It's not out of any kind of protest. It's just I got other stuff to watch that I know I'm going to like more, and I don't have like that particular form of self-indulgence. It's going to take 2.5 hours of my time to see what he thinks a time travel secret agent movie looks like. I don't care if the performances are good. I'm just not going to get into it. So anyone waiting for a review of Tenet, sorry.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like we're the only two. Christopher Nolan's like, he's basically our demographics, like favorite, like guys our age, white dudes in our age range, like fucking worship that guy.
Yeah.
And you and I feel are like two of the lone dissenting voices that he makes very flawed films that people just fucking latch onto as, you know, as these brilliant statements, and they're usually mediocre at best. I mean, there's things he's great at, and he's a very competent filmmaker. I wouldn't say he's an artist, but he is an artisan. Like, he knows how to make a movie. He has the skills to make a very good looking movie. You know, he knows how to make, you know, big budget films that work. But at the end of the day, like, I never connect with them. I feel like they're essentially soulless sometimes. I feel like I said, they're flawed, and let's not go there. But either way, I agree with you. I was going to ask you if you were going to see it. I haven't seen it. I don't know if I will never see it. I'm in no rush to see Tenet.
It's unlikely. It's unlikely I will see it. If somebody ties me down and says, you're so wrong about Tenet, and it happens to be someone who has a track record of movie choices I agree with, I might sit down. But I will tell you, Tenet, speaking of self-indulgence, Tenet took it to a whole another level. And I'm not going to get too far into this because it's not what our podcast is about. But whenever I think of Christopher Nolan from here on out, I'm going to think about this guy being the artist who is so self-indulgent that in 2020, he figured that it was worth losing your life over seeing his movie theatrically.
Right. We are the same.
I get the push for theatrical. I actually hate what Warner Brothers did with HBO Max, where their entire slate next year is going to be released directly to the servers instead of the theaters. So I understand a lot of Christopher Nolan's arguments about theatrical release, but to push theatrical release on your movie because your movie is so important that it can't wait another year to be seen, when everybody else was pushing back and putting things on the back burner. And there's still several major tentpoles that have not been released as of this time in early January 2021. And Christopher Nolan's Tenet is going to be known forever as the flop of 2020. Even though it made more money than anything I would ever expect that I would ever make. It made something like $300 million, but good. I'm glad it tanked because he was pushing it at the wrong time in the summer of 2020, saying, no, you should go see my movie this way. And
he's kind of an arrogant
to put it
prick.
nicely, fuck you.
Yeah, for real.
But with all that said, there was a movie that involved time travel that came out in 2020 that I did rent with my family and watch at home and paid the $20 premium, which is totally justifiable because, for God's sakes, the people that make movies do need to make money. So no, brand new movies probably shouldn't be free or part of a subscription service. There should be a cover charge for movies so that people can get paid. But that movie was Bill and Ted Face the Music, which I thought was a much better time travel movie than the Unseen Tenant. Did you get a chance to see Bill and Ted Face the Music?
No. I will say the original Bill and Ted's a classic. I have personal animosity towards Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey because of a childhood trauma that's related to that movie that I won't get into.
Oh, no.
But they're great movies and they're very fun. And I was very much looking forward to it. I will say what has kept me from seeing it so far and paying the money is that most of the reviews I heard were not, oh, you need to rent this. It was pretty good. So I feel like I'm not going to, and again, I do feel like as much as I love those guys and as a child of the 80s and 90s, like, of course I want to support, but at the same time, like, was it too long to wait for a sequel to Bill and Ted's? Yes. And then also, most of the people I saw, it wasn't exactly passionate, glowing reviews. It was mainly like, hey, it was fun. Like, so I figured
go back and look at the reviews for the first one. That's the thing. Like, I'm not saying that it's a brilliant movie. I've never even, growing up, I enjoyed Bill and Ted. I liked it. It was never one, like, I didn't watch the cartoons or any of that, but apparently nobody did because those got that and the TV show got 86 pretty quickly. The reason why I don't think I got all that into Bill and Ted when it was brand new was because I actually saw it at the drive-in in a double feature with UHF. And that's a fantastic double feature at the drive-in, UHF and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But I will fully confess, UHF in my 10-year-old brain blew the other one away by so far. When I left the theater, I had nothing to say about Bill and Ted because I was still wanting to talk about UHF. So growing up, that really kind of took its place while everyone else was talking about Bill and Ted. I'm like, yeah, but did anybody see UHF? And of course, time has shown UHF was something of a notorious disappointment for Weird Al and Jay Levy, the director. In terms of its box office, they're very proud of the film itself. I've been very lucky. I've gotten to talk to both men. I got to go to each of their houses, as a matter of fact. I've been very lucky to get to meet many of the people involved in UHF, and that still holds a special place in my heart. And I think that it eclipsed Bill and Ted. But I was there. I was there in the 80s. I know how big it was, and I went and saw the sequel, and I watched the new one because I felt like it was a good relief in the summer just to like sit back and watch something like this. And
yeah, absolutely.
To all of the negative reviews, I do have to say, and I've said this about other things too, go back and watch the original again and tell me how much this falls short of it, because your memory is glossing over a lot of the glaring problems with the originals. And if anything, Face the Music is the better movie, but the first one is more enjoyable and more forgivable of its shortcomings. I claim that all of them are very watchable, very enjoyable, and if you want to call them a masterpiece, then that speaks to your taste, and people can have fun with that, but don't ever take it so seriously.
Well, and that's the thing. I feel like, as somebody who admittedly has rose-tinted glasses due to nostalgia reasons and loving movies, like passionately loving movies that upon a revisitation may not hold up quite the same. It's like I can never begrudge anybody their, sort of romanticized version of what film, cartoon, whatever, because they loved it in their childhood. I would be the biggest hypocrite. But one thing I do feel like, though, is especially at that time, this was the same time of like things like Beavis and Butthead. I mentioned earlier, Pauly Shore and the Encino Man, the late 80s into the early 90s, where movies were like characters were meant to be dumb, but they were sweet dumb. They were very bro, like, and it's kind of hard, especially now in our modern society, as everything is so fucking pessimistic and everything is so, there's sarcasm seeps out of everything. Seeing sincere characters who are just dumb, sincere, well-meaning morons, like there is something comforting about that. I think
very
we need
well
more
put. Morons. Yeah, what happened to the well-meaning morons? The ones with bad head, good heart.
That's right. There you go.
And Bill and Ted were definitely that. The original idea, first off, it was originally going to be Bill and Ted and Bob. It was based on a stand-up routine these guys did. And when it came time to make the movie, Bob didn't want to make the movie, so it became Bill and Ted. This wasn't, I should point out, this was not a stand-up routine by Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves. This is by the writers of Bill and Ted, who created the characters and then cast actually perfect actors for it.
Perfect.
And that Keanu Reeves says someday on his gravestone, it will say, here lies Keanu Reeves, he was Ted. And, and it's
real quick,
cast.
One of my favorite clips recently, as the entire world has fallen in love with Keanu Reeves over the years, there's this really cute little, it's like a press junket thing. And he's like, he's like a guy in his 20s. He's like, so, obviously you're super well known. Do you have any particular memories of playing Bill? And Keanu Reeves doesn't hesitate to be like, I played Ted. And the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, dude, you lost all of your nerd credit. He's like, go, be gone. And he gives this guy a hard time, and it's so fucking funny and very cute. And again, sort of shows how likable Keanu Reeves is, because he's obviously just having fun with this guy, and it's so sweet. Anyway, sorry, I had to say this, because
it is
saw
sweet.
It just a few weeks ago, and it's just so sweet.
I love it. I love losing your nerd cred, and he did. That's you can't make that mistake. And I have to say they do provide a pretty good counterpoint to Doc and Marty, the other famous time travelers of a similar era, the super genius versus the class dunces is kind of an interesting dichotomy. And I think that's the only way it really was going to work anyways. But Alex Winters actually said that he gets letters from all sorts of school teachers. And he says the ones he gets from the history teachers praise him and claim that he taught his kids how to enjoy history. And the other half are from English teachers who curse him for creating a whole generation of
misspellers,
of butchers of the English language. And and the original Bill and Ted, just to loop that back together real quick, I thought this was kind of funny because originally they were supposed to go through time causing all of the major catastrophes. Like they were supposed to go back and
I could see that.
Yeah, cause the Titanic to crash into the iceberg and cause the Hindenburg to explode. I'm so glad they didn't go down that route.
Same.
That would have taken away some of the good heart part of it, even if they didn't intend to do it. They needed to not.
That sounds like a Mel Brooks kind of type of movie, and like I like the fact that like you nailed it. Like it's like two dum-dums who just happen to like pull through at the end, and
right, and they kind of
friends with all these.
And they had to cast probably the smartest comedian of the time to be their Doc
Which
Brown,
is again, I was waiting for you to bring up,
George Carlin as Rufus.
Yeah, I mean, goddamn, rest in peace. Like
sorely missed in the third one too. That is probably the biggest. His daughter is in it, but
they don't. I remember when they were doing it. I thought there was a rumor that they were going to do like CGI Rufus, but they don't do that, right?
No, they do it, but they don't do it onto like an actor's face. It's like a CGI image of Rufus, but it's not meant to be Rufus alive. It's meant to be like I can't remember the exact details, but it's more along the lines of, I remember
like they're seeing
Rufus
a hologram of him. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not meant to be something that they can interact with, and that you didn't have anybody doing a Carlin impression. So they didn't do that. They got his daughter to appear in it, and that was. The movie doesn't go by without mentioning Rufus, but Rufus doesn't appear.
How could you? I mean, yeah, you could.
Yeah, that was, I think, going in, and even in 1989, seeing it at the drive-in, he was the only recognizable face to me. It was, that's that comedian that my parents have records of that I'm not allowed to listen to. Although I got my hands on him anyways. Sorry, Dad, I've been listening to your Richard Pryor records since I was third grade.
Yep.
I guess this is probably a decent enough time to bring up some is it a time travel movie question.
Let's do it. Let's get into this area of the topic.
Well, you've already mentioned two of them. One was going to be Encino Man because it does actually follow time travel rules, where Brendan Fraser's character is a fish out of water and all of that, but it never really quite feels like a time travel movie. What do you think? Is Encino Man
It's definitely Rip Van Winkle. I mean, that's one of the most, it's literally caveman gets de-thawed. Now he's a caveman. I mean, it's not, I don't know. It's one of the stupidest fun movies ever. Also, growing up, I was a big, some very quick backstory because we didn't get into this. So my father used to get told he looked like John Aston all the time. My father got John Aston, Dennis Hopper without the mustache. Dennis Hopper was really like, it's funny though, with the mustache, it was either John Aston or fucking Sonny Bono, which he was not a fan of at all. But it weirdly, as a party as a kid, I got told I looked like Sean Astin as a kid. Oh. I was like, oh, that's cool. It's just to go from Goonies, playing Mikey in Goonies, and then he's like playing like the chubby nerds after that or whatever. But I just always liked him, and I'm glad he had a recent renaissance. First off, I will go on record as saying, I even said this in the middle of a big work meeting. Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee is the greatest, best friend / supporting character in film history. Like,
oh yeah,
it literally couldn't be more of. But he's just, anyways. I love Sean Astin.
He was the reason to cry in Return of the King.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dude, he's just the most. Oh God, I still well up. Well, a great character, but I'm just glad he's had this renaissance. But I was at the time, because he had done this movie. I think before that, I literally think the last thing, or one of the last things he had done before Encino Man was this movie called The Willies, or it was like in between that. It was one of the worst low-budget horror movies of the 80s, even though I have a fondness for it because that's sort of my bread and butter.
I remember The Willies.
So I was just glad to see him in a sort of role. So for that reason alone, and I will say it's the most likable. First off, everybody knows Brendan Fraser is also a national treasure, and thank God that he's sort of had a bit of better luck because he's had some struggles in his life. But it will also say it was the only time when Pauly Shore was actually very likable. It was like he hadn't worn out his welcome yet with his "we's and the Jews" and stuff. But
it was the start of people being done with Pauly Shore. It was
yeah, I know. Right from the get-go, people were done. It's funny. My friend Harant Nalbantian, if you somehow listen to this, I miss you, buddy. His father. So my friend Harant was first generation Armenian. His dad born in his whole parents and before all born in Armenia. His dad barely spoke English. His dad's favorite film actor of all time is Pauly Shore. Every single Pauly Shore movie. I'm not going to name them, but like, in the army now, like he would watch all of them and think they were fucking hysterical. He literally thought Pauly Shore was the funniest person. And I was like, there must be something in the, I don't know. But I mean, I'm glad somebody explains that he's still making movies. But anyways, I love Encino Man. But is it a time travel movie? To answer your actual question, if we consider the Rip Van Winkle sort of scenario a time travel movie, then sure, because that's literally, but yeah, I don't. It wouldn't be the first thing I think of, but
There's a reason why it's on the list. Another one you already mentioned, which was Donnie Darko. We don't have to go much further into that, except for I wanted to say I do like Donnie Darko, but I do think that it's overrated. So I actually agree with you. I also was wondering about a couple of ones that fit into the romance section would be Safety Not Guaranteed or Happy Accidents.
Safety Not Guaranteed, and I'll let you talk about it because there's an interesting story behind that movie. It was one of the ones I haven't seen, and I wanted to see it since it got released, and I was going to watch it this weekend to sort of, I just couldn't get around it. But some movie I do actually want to see because just even the story behind it's interesting. So
it's worth seeing, and so is Happy. I think you're the one who recommended I see Happy Accidents back in 2000. That's the one with Marissa Tomei
and the two of my favorite people of all time,
Vincent D'Onofrio,
and I mean literally like one of my favorite male actors and one of my biggest crushes. So. It's not like a brilliant movie, but it's very fun.
If I had to pick one or the other, I would definitely go with Happy Accidents. Both of the stories are about, they're not particularly similar in their plots, except for that they deal with a woman who is questioning her own sanity and falling for someone who clearly believes in time travel. In Safety Not Guaranteed, it's literally based on an actual personals ad that showed up in a real newspaper. Someone looking for a companion to travel through time with, and must bring your own supplies, and Safety Not Guaranteed. And it actually ended up on Jay Leno's headlines and all of this. They found out later it was just the guy who was in charge of editing the personals section was running light on ads that day and was asked to just kind of throw one out there. And so it was intended as a joke, but it caught the attention of this filmmaker too. And great performances. It's about a magazine investigating that personal ad, and Aubrey Plaza has to kind of covertly go in as if she's answering the personal ad. And then she starts to believe, well, maybe there is something to this story. And are they really going to time travel? And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone as to whether they do, but I will say that you get up into the very end before you find out if time travel is real or not. So there's no actual time travel in the story. Whereas Happy Accidents, it's Marissa Tomei falling in love with the man who claims he's from the future and is creating arguments and things that are much more compelling and a lot harder to disprove because they aren't based on whether or not science has come up with time travel yet, and more to do with, they've come up with it in the future and now he's here, and he thinks people are following him, and there's a whole list of things that he puts on her in terms of how you can determine who's a time traveler and all of this. And she's falling for him because he's very sweet, on top of potentially being deranged and dangerous. But and I'm not going to give away the ending to that one either as to whether or not it's the truth. But I think because you're dealing with a character who is from another time, who is a fish out of water, and is spending the movie being impressed and amazed by his surroundings, he is very much a fish out of water, falling in love with someone who existed in a time prior to him. And I think that does count as a time travel movie. I think the jury's still out on Safety Not Guaranteed, but I would say that Happy Accidents is a time travel movie, and people should see both of them. But my money's on Happy Accidents.
Yeah, there's like the 2000s, the very early 2000s, like had a lot of indie comedies that I don't know if it was the relationships I was in at the time, but I saw all of them. I literally saw pretty much anyone that got a theatrical release, all of the,
indie rom-coms were a thing in the late 90s, early
huge,
2000s, man. I mean,
but
we were the perfect age to be seeing
20s.
those at that time.
On this topic, though, obviously, if you're going to talk, you have to talk about one of the greatest love stories of all time, time travel or not, and that is the movie Demolition Man.
Yes.
So
there's definitely room for Demolition Man.
I mean, if you're talking about movie, like, it's definitely, I mean, Brave New World, that it's very loosely based off of, is the quintessential Rip Van Winkle sort of, story. And, man waking up, man from the past who's now considered to be like a savage in this, much more sophisticated new world and stuff.
PC world.
And of course, Demolition Man decides to take that and go to the fucking, like, the single most over the top. Everything about Demolition Man is as over the top as it gets. In fact, I do feel like, and I know my buddy Derek, if you're listening, this one's for you.
Does Dirty Derek listen to our show?
I don't know. I hope
I've never met Dirty Derek. I only know Dirty Derek through am I allowed to say the name of the other show?
Sure. Yeah,
the Movie Misfits podcast. If anyone wants more of their fill on James during the week.
Who can't get more of this? Yeah.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but we're on our 17th episode and we've talked about your other podcast so many times, and I've just never asked permission to promote it. And I know you're not going to promote yourself.
Well, to be fair, though, also, we don't even know. There is, as we've had some problems with names, because originally we were under the Tank Rodriguez Show umbrella, and then we had two separate shows under the umbrella. We had the Texas Podcast Massacre and Going Commando, which is separately a horror, and a action movie podcast separately, obviously, if you can decipher from the names. But now we've tried to do them separate from the Tank Rodriguez Show as its own entity, and we chose the name Movie Misfits, and then turned out at pretty much almost the exact same time we launched, two other podcasts launched with that same name.
Oh, no.
Yeah, one was like a month before us, and one was like a week after us. So look for it out there. You'll find it. If you can't get enough of me and me rambling about movies.
Yeah, honestly, if you're looking for back episodes, look for the Tank Rodriguez Show anyways, because the switch to the Movie Misfits, you've got, what, 2 or 3 episodes of that under your belt, but there's over 100 Tank Rodriguez shows.
That's right.
So if you want to back catalog James. I didn't mean to get us off track, but I listened to every single one of them. Well, I don't listen to the wrestling one just because that's not my world and I won't get all the references, but the action and horror stuff I love listening to, and I've never met your co-hosts, but Dirty Derek in particular, we should try to get him on this show sometime, and he can talk about Demolition Man.
I think he'd be honored. But yeah, I think Demolition Man, if you've never seen it, is basically about basically Sylvester Stallone plays a cop who is defawed because there's a guy named Simon Phoenix, this crime lord, and he's so outrageous and so crazy that they can't find anybody to deal with him. So they dethaw Sylvester Stallone. He's basically like a fish out of water. He doesn't get it. The 3 seashells, Taco Bell's the only restaurant. There's all these like crazy, stupid. I've had to talk about the 3 seashells more in my life than I ever cared to. Thanks, Derek. But it's a fucking suit. I mean, this was like 90s Stallone, so he was starting to get, his career was starting to wane a little bit as he got into, films that weren't as huge. In fact, he had some pretty big commercial and critical flops, such as his version of Judge Dredd, God damn it. And then some movies I feel are actually pretty maligned, like Cliffhanger, which I think is actually a fucking really cool movie that people don't give enough respect for. But so this movie, though, is just it's just pure cheese. I will say, this movie made a star out of Sandra Bullock before Speed.
This is the first time I saw her, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, she was a cutie pie then. But I will say the standout of this movie is definitely Wesley Snipes as Simon Phoenix, the blonde
named Phoenix. Get it? He rises like a phoenix. I love how subtle this movie is.
Movie just hits you over the head with its subtlety. And that's what Stallone's really well known for.
And I love Wesley Snipes in this film. He's a lot of fun, but I do have to point out that he really went to the Cesar Romero school of supervillain acting.
Over the top acting, I know.
Yes, I mean, but
again, though, I think it's so. Gleeful. That's the one thing, though. As I've talked about this before, sometimes that really works. There are certain roles and performances where you can tell the actor took a choice and it really works. Kiss of the Vampire. Is it Kiss of the Vampire? Oh, fuck.
The Nicolas Cage one?
Yes, the Nicolas Cage movie.
Kiss.
What's Vampire's Kiss? That is a fucking bold decision he made in that movie. Although I guess that more calls a script. But certain times overacting really works. And to me, in this case, I think Wesley Snipes being so over the top and so cartoonish and comic book style, I think works for him. And I think he does it really well. And it's a good counterpoint to Stallone's character, who's sort of like, he's playing the quintessential sort of like silent, kind of like sardonic badass. But yeah, it's a great movie if you like fun, dumb action films. And I do think, it's infinitely rewatchable even today. Do I love it as much as my pal Dirty Derek? No, I do not. But that he loves that movie. But it's definitely a fun, rewatchable movie. And I do think that it is a time travel movie.
Well, it's Rip Van Winkle time travel, but it is time travel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that makes it, to me, why I think I define it extra as time travel is because it is showing a man who's waking up into this whole new futuristic world that he doesn't know anything. He's basically having to relearn society, and ultimately, whether it's a time machine or cryogenically frozen, ultimately that's sort of the same thing, in the long run. So, but yeah, Demolition Man, is it a time travel movie? I would vote yes.
I would say 100% that is a time travel movie. In Kuwait, it's actually called Rambo the Destroyer is the title of Demolition Man.
I love it.
Reminds me too, just to weave back into the last episode, because there was a fun fact I forgot on Army of Darkness. In Japan, Army of Darkness was released as Captain Supermarket. I think that's kind of great.
Some of we could talk about maybe we'll do a whole episode about international films release and getting different title changes and stuff, like, because some of them, there are some really insane ones, but that's one of the better ones. Supermarket, that's pretty good.
Back to Demolition Man real quick, there are a couple of what ifs. First off, Wesley Snipes was not the initial choice for Phoenix. Sylvester Stallone very much wanted Jackie Chan, but Jackie Chan felt at the time that playing a villain in an American movie was not going to work out well for him with his international career playing the good guy. And it also probably would have correctly, he made the right decision, because it would have probably typecast him as a villain in the United States as well for a while. The 90s was pretty big on typecasting people.
Yeah, especially foreigners.
And the casting choices prior to Stallone even being involved was actually Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I knew Jean-Claude was part of it, yeah.
And neither one of them wanted to take the role because they both wanted to play, like, neither one of them wanted to play Phoenix. No one wanted to be the villain. So they just said, well, fuck it, both of you, we're getting you out of here, and brought in the actors who went on to do it. But thank God Steven Seagal just kind of didn't do anything that most people wanted to take a look at, because I think he's just kind of a scumbag. But Jean-Claude Van Damme did stick his toe into the time travel pool. We did promise you guys some JCVD. James, what are your feelings on Time Cop? Because you were probably, it's something that I've gotten into later in life, but you were probably right there on top of that movie as it came out in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. I saw that shit in the theater. Opening day. I have no qualms about saying I was a diehard Jean-Claude Van Damme fan. Still am. I think especially as he's redeemed himself as a human being, I think, but also had Jean-Claude Van Damme was a guy that definitely did not have a sense of humor about himself as a young actor, and now has had a fantastic sense of humor about himself.
Very Shatner-esque in a weird sort of way.
Very much, yes, absolutely. That's a great analogy. Like, he's very self-aware of who he is, and he doesn't now mind playing to that. But Time Cop was a movie. It was a double. It hit me two times, because one was it was a brand new Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and kind of a bigger budget, theatrical release, because a lot of his films were small release and sometimes even straight to video.
Yeah, this is a big one for Van Damme.
And it was also based off a Dark Horse comic. Not a particularly good comic book, but it was still a comic book adaptation, so I was very excited about it. Is it a great movie? No. Is it a fun movie? Yes. There's some great sequences in it. There's this whole robber barons thing where they're gonna rob a stagecoach, and all of a sudden they pull off fucking, futuristic guns, and there's just a lot of cool shit. There's the whole thing there's the opening sequence. I remember when they're in the mall, and the robber, the person actor's running, and he looks, all of a sudden you see Jean-Claude Van Damme's foot like it's about to hit him in the face. Like, he didn't have to kick him, he was scared. It was just so cool. Jean-Claude Van Damme had a very crispy mullet in it, So be aware there's a high mullet
Yes,
content in this.
Jean-Claude Van Mullet is in this film.
Yeah.
And that,
but I mean,
that I can imagine that mall scene is probably better and more authentic than the Wonder Woman 84 mall scene.
Yes, hands down. Yes, agreed. Ugh, Jesus, I can't talk about that movie again. It got eviscerated at the time. It was not a I don't know if it was commercially successful. I don't think it was that commercially successful.
It did all right.
Critically torn apart.
Yeah, critics hated it.
Yeah, but I think at this point, I feel like it's become like, I think I talk to people now, especially people younger than me, who are like, oh yeah, I love Time Cop. I'm like, well, I'm glad it's not that it's some like cult classic or whatever, but I do feel like people sort of embrace it for what it was. He hadn't made his fucking movie with Des Rodman yet, which we won't even talk about, but
it does fall into a Van Damme trope, though. Van Damme seems to love movies that involve two Van Dammes in one frame.
That's right.
That just seems to be something he visits over and over again. You know what? I know I'm in this movie, but I think this movie needs another one of me.
Exactly. Exactly.
So two Van Dammes for the price of one in Time Cop.
Actually, I just looked it up. Actually, it still remains Van Damme's highest grossing film as a lead actor. And his second film to break 100 million barrier worldwide. So good for him. I mean, like I said, it wasn't, I remember the time I think, people went to see it the opening day and didn't do much after that. I do feel like we will need to revisit Van Damme as a whole episode because I have a lot to talk about in his filmography. And
I would love to do that. Partly because I didn't give him, I was very dismissive of him at his height, and it's something that I have gone back. It's very understandable. But I love him now. And did I ever tell you about my? I had a script idea. I don't know if this would be a movie or if this is like a short thing that I would try to sell to Adult Swim or what. But I want to combine two 80s classics or 80s, 90s classics and tell the story about a group of ragtag police officers who go off on madcap adventures in love and life and booze throughout various decades, much to the chagrin of their gruff and surly commandant, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it would be called Time Cop Academy.
I would watch the shit out of that. Dude, I would watch every episode. That's right up my alley.
It started off as a joke, but now I'm actually thinking, that would be kind of fun to write. I've never written anything that absurd before. So
please do.
Maybe Time Cap Academy coming to a theater near you, or at least to Adult Swim or some sort of place that would accept that kind of material. Adult Swim was also very responsible, I think, for a movie like Kung Fury, which isn't an Adult Swim short, but Kung Fury does involve time travel. I don't know if you're I think we're running a little too low on time to cover Kung Fury too deeply.
Yeah, we won't. Yeah, we don't. But it's a short film anyways. But
look it up, folks. Kung Fury is definitely worth your time if you have an affinity for movies like Time Cop. And there is one I want to throw out there before we get too much further, because there's such a distinct feeling to the future from the perspective of the 90s. And I think Demolition Man had it, and I think Time Cop had it, and I think Free Jack has it. Have you ever seen Free Jack?
I have seen Free Jack. It's been a while, but yeah, I have seen Free Jack. That's is that the Gene Simmons one?
No, that is Mick Jagger and Buster Poindexter himself. What's his real name? Johansson, David Johansson.
Yeah, David Johansson. I thought, was it?
And they are supporting Emilio Estevez.
Oh, Emilio Estevez, yes, with
Rene Russo and Anthony Hopkins. And Anthony Hopkins and Mick Jagger have both gone on to say that they think this was the worst film that either of them was in. This was horribly trashed when it came out. But looking at it, I did rewatch it recently in leading up to this, just because I was kind of like, well, let's give Free Jack another shot. Let's see if there's something there. Because I remembered enjoying it, but I was also 12. I will say that Free Jack has gotten an unfair amount of criticism. It is not a good movie. I'm not trying to push this as some sort of a lost classic or anything. But if you like silly movies, I think enough time has passed to allow Free Jack to be a fun, bad movie. Emilio Estevez plays a race car driver who is pulled out of a fatal accident just before his death, pulled into the future. I think it was seriously like, I think it was like 1997. I don't know why these movies don't project out further. Somehow between 1991 and 1997, there was going to be a whole apocalyptic scenario, and time travel was going to be possible. And rich people were going to free jack bodies before they are destroyed in fatal accidents in other points in time. And kind of in a, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's almost like Get Out, the recent Jordan Peele horror film, which
comedy.
Yeah, right. Jesus. First horror film in ages to actually win the best screenwriting Oscar, and I called it a comedy.
I mean, it's got funny moments.
It
got
does.
Funny elements.
No, what a great movie. But similar conceit in this. Rich people, as they are dying, are able to put their brains into the minds or the bodies. Emilio Estevez's character, in his real time, his car crashes into like the side of a bridge or a tunnel and explodes. So when there's no traces left behind, nobody is any the wiser. So now he's stuck in the future, and he manages to get away despite the fact that he's been free jacked by Mick Jagger himself, and becomes a race through the future as Emilio Estevez tries to put the pieces together, and actually ends up forming an interesting bond with Mick Jagger's character, to where they start off kind of taunting each other, and then it starts to turn into them helping each other in sort of a sportsman-like kind of way. Like, well, I've got you now, but I'm going to give you 5 minutes to run before I send my men. That sort of thing. And again, is it good? No. Did I enjoy myself for about an hour and 40 minutes? Yeah. The nostalgia is there now for that stage of Emilio Estevez's career. I think we can enjoy it.
By the way, the movie I was thinking of was actually Runaway, because I often confuse those two movies because they both have a rock star and a leading sort of supporting role. Science fiction movie that weirdly features like a legitimate actor and then some random rock star. I will say, weirdly though, even though I'm a much bigger fan, Gene Simmons is a human piece of shit. I weirdly have a weird soft spot for Kiss as a entity. I think aesthetically I love them, and there's definitely a nostalgia element of, I still remember being scared of them, but Gene Simmons is such a piece of shit. But he's actually a pretty good actor, where Mick Jagger is much more of a respectable rock star, a respectable musician, not a great actor. Even though he was serviceable, but
he has his moments. I thought performance was really good, and his version of Ned Kelly was interesting. But we're talking about him much more in his prime, whereas I feel like in a lot of ways the Rolling Stones were only getting better into the 90s. His acting was falling off a bit. And he didn't do too much past Free Jack, if anything. I'm not sure has Mick Jagger done anything since Free Jack acting wise?
He has. I think he's done one or two things. I'd have to look it up, but
one of the
I can remember him
movies about Basquiat or something.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, sometimes there's movies that even if they're not great movies, there's something interesting, at least in the script or in the conceit or in the overall, like, sort of plot of the movie that's really interesting. And I think Free Jack is one of those cases where it's actually a pretty interesting concept. It just maybe the execution didn't.
If they were to remake it now, I think it would actually really work, which is kind of interesting that Jordan Peele kind of had a similar conceit. I'm sure that Jordan Peele wasn't particularly inspired by Free Jack, but that similar sort of, it's definitely the rich being obscene and looking down on other people.
By the way, he's in a movie just a few years ago, 2 years ago, Burnt Orange Heresy, where he was playing a character, Mick Jagger. He was also in the movie Get On Up. I don't know if I haven't seen that movie, although it is the James Brown biopic. He was in a movie, The Man from Elysian Fields, which actually one of the I was thinking from the early 2000s. Yes. So yeah, he's done a few things, but anyways, just wanted to make sure that we try to be accurate with our information. Anyways, he was also in one of the weirdest fucking movies that seemed to always be on TV, Jumping Jack Flash from 1986. Fucking that movie was ambiguous. I could not escape that movie. It was on HBO every day, Jumping Jack Flash, and it's a fun movie.
The Whoopi Goldberg movie.
Yeah. Anyways, weird side tangent, but one thing though, because we were talking about, is it a time travel movie? One of the biggest subgenres, and I know you wanted to talk about this as well, is the kind of time loop or caught in a time loop reliving the same moment or day, and there's a
Yes.
lot of those, weirdly.
There is. It's almost its own, like, I think you could almost argue that they're not time travel because there's so many of them, and they're not really, part of it is that they're not traveling.
Well, and that, but it is a thing of like, they're going back to the same, like, there is definitely, I mean, obviously, if you're just
give us some examples.
Semantics alone.
So the people know what we're talking. Give us some examples so that we
the most classic example of all time is Groundhog's Day, which Groundhog's Day is one of the most perfect films ever made.
Yes. Amen.
There's literally nothing, I mean, everything in that movie works. I love the history of that movie and like how it got made. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Harold Ramis wrote the script. And originally there was an explanation, like there's like a fucking gypsy curse. And the fact that the movie, that they fucking nixed that out of that portion of the script out of the film, and you're never given an explanation, I think makes that movie so much better.
Infinitely better.
There's a time when Andie MacDowell was probably like the coolest actress. She was like, Four Weddings and a Funeral era, like
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape, exactly. And I think, but she's never been more likable than in this movie. But it's like, dude, Bill Murray just being amazing. Just. I like you say, it's Groundhog's Day. I've never met one person. There are movies people hate. The Godfather. People hate everything. You can find somebody who hates everything. I have never met one person that hates Groundhog's Day. They may not have seen it, but I've never met a single person that watched it and didn't love it.
It is. It's pretty near perfect. In fact, I would say it's perfect. And it is, like you said, it's what they don't tell you. You don't know how this happened, which means that you also don't know how it's going to end. Although you get a pretty good sense of it from the tone that it's going to have to do with Phil's just going to have to become a better person. He reaches so far into it. It's not that he has to wait to become a better person, because he has to spend a lot of time to learn how to play piano and to, all these other things. He figures out how to be a better person much sooner than he actually gets out of the time loop. But another thing that they leave unanswered that I've always found interesting, because you'll get different arguments from different people, is just how long was he living Groundhog's Day? Because I've heard some people say 10 years, which seems absolutely cruel. And I've heard some people that have said 4,000 years, which is fascinating to think of in terms of...
And the thing is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think there is this like a making of or like documentary about it where Harold Ramis actually says, like, he doesn't... I'd have to rewatch it to make sure that I'm not misremembering it, but where he says he knows what the answer is, but he refused to like sort of say. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's just that's the thing is there's so much
fully like this movie is every Buddhist's favorite movie. Like seriously, the religion has kind of made Groundhog's Day like their movie that they recommend. The religion itself, I find that great.
Well, first off, one of the things I love about the movie is there's so much of the movie happens in between what we see, like in between the scenes we see. There's so much movie, obviously, like you said, because you don't see him learn all the skills he acquires through it. Like they don't need to show you that, but the way that the movie is written, you can tell he's already lived through some interesting shit and he's gone through these different phases. It's just such a great script. It's so smart. But I will say, even though he does learn to be a better person, I do feel like the point of it is the whole time he's trying to like still, even though he has become a better person, he's learned lessons. There's an unselfish aspect to the love. It is reciprocated. There's nothing manipulative inherently. Even when he's learned to be a better person, he's doing nice things and he's doing things for the community. He's still innately trying to manipulate the situation. And I do think at the end scene, it is purely unselfish and it's completely, the love is reciprocated. Either way, the fact that this silly comedy from the, I don't know, like 87, 86?
No, this was like 93.
Is it 93? I was almost said 90s, and I felt like that was too wrong. I'll tell you right now. 93, yeah, fuck, okay. Well, yeah, even more impressive. Like I said, the silly movie that came out of nowhere, and it's a movie. I've talked about this movie with people for, I think I might even spend a night at you at Denny's and other friends of ours talking about this movie. But it's just one of those movies. The movie came out last year that, people were like, spoiler, I work for the company that released it. That has nothing to do with my job at the company, but I work for the company who was the streaming service who released it. And internally there was all this talk like it's the best thing we've ever done and stuff. And I heard the plot and I was like, what? Is it literally a remake of Groundhog's Day? Because it's crazy, which is the movie Palm Springs. And I hated it before I even saw it because I was like, there's no way. I don't care if it's genius. It's such a exact copy of Groundhog Day that there's no way I'm going to like it. Surprisingly enough, no, the movie's actually very charming and very very enjoyable. Definitely, even though it's premise-wise is very, very, very close to Groundhog Day, it's still its own movie and it's still charming. And I think that the dialogue is really fun. Andy Samberg, I think, was the perfect person for that role because you can see him as a character sort of, he's still a likable guy, but he's sort of a train wreck of a person and stuff. And it's definitely a fun movie because of how much it shares just overall plot-wise with Groundhog Day. It's so hard for me. It's even hard for me to say it now. Like, it is a good movie, though. It is good, even though it's very much, you've seen this plot before, but it's the way that the movie itself rolls out the story and where the characters go that is interesting. And there are some interesting elements to it, like some interesting subplots and stuff that are different from Groundhog Day that's also interesting. But I don't know, did you see that?
No, it's on my list. It's something that I'll get around to it. It's something I have a feeling I can probably put on a night when my wife and I are looking for something to watch rather than my late night movies, which is most of my movies, to be honest.
Yeah, for real.
So I've been kind of waiting for the right time to pull it out, on a Saturday night where her and I are alone or whatever, and it just hasn't come around yet. But I really want to see it. I really like Andy Samberg, and like we said in the last episode, it's okay if it's a lot like Groundhog's Day because modern audiences need something to grab onto that's not Groundhog's Day. And honestly, it'll be a lot easier to show Groundhog's Day to somebody who appreciates Palm Springs. Yeah. And to keep Groundhog's Day legacy alive. It's not to bury Groundhog's Day, nor is they both belong in their own space. And another one that kind of belongs in its own space is Edge of Tomorrow, as kind of the hardcore sci-fi action version of the exact same conceit. Did you ever see that one with Tom Cruise?
Just watched it, actually. I watched it just a few days ago. Surprisingly, I loved it.
I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan, so I was delighted to see a movie that
it's funny. In the last few years, I've realized I am a huge Tom Cruise fan, even though I've never seen one of the Mission Impossible films and probably never will. Just it's not my thing. It's like the Jason Bourne, even James Bond, I can only take so much of. And only then I like it because the aesthetics and the sort of campy vibe of it and, the sort of mid-century modernist, visuals of the James Bond films, the early James Bond films. Again, new ones don't really have any, I know I'm missing out and stuff. That's a whole separate conversation, which that's a personal thing for 2021 is actually for me to watch all of the, try to force myself to watch all of the modern James Bond films and all of the Jason Bourne films. It's just normally not my thing. But having said that, going through, I just am a huge fan of Tom Cruise as an actor. Even the films, even like War of the Worlds, which is not, I don't think it's deserves to be as maligned as it is. In fact, I think the first 30 minutes of War of the Worlds is actually one of the most tense, terrifying, truly scary science fiction action film. It actually is very upsetting. It's terrifying. But again, it has the conceit of unlikable kids and that's a whole other topic. Anyways, but Edge of Tomorrow. Let's talk about Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah, weirdly, and it's by Doug Liman, the guy who did Swinger. So it's just a weird, and it's based off of this manga called All You Need Is Kill, which is
almost wish they kept that. I like All You Need Is Kill more than I like Live, Die, Repeat, which is the other title they're trying to force it to have. It's kind of an odd thing. They made the slogan for the movie larger than the title of the movie because they didn't think anyone was going to buy Edge of Tomorrow. So if you hear anybody refer
to such a lackluster,
it's a lackluster title on its own, but Live, Die, Repeat is a dumb title too.
Absolutely.
If you're wondering what movie we're talking about, if you haven't seen this and you're scrolling through what movies to watch, the one that you might think is called Live, Die, Repeat is Edge of Tomorrow. Probably the last great thing that Bill Paxton did.
Weirdly, also, I didn't realize because I'd never heard anybody talk about it, but Tony Todd is in it in one small role that just keeps happening over and over again. But I'm like, what? Tony Todd? Weird. But yeah, it's weirdly such a likable script. Seeing Tom Cruise. First of all, Tom Cruise kind of played against type because at the beginning of the movie he's sort of a coward and kind of a he's not fucking Jack Reacher. He's sort of like a scumbag opportunist coward guy. He's like an ad guy. He does propaganda journalism. But then again, I like the fact that like they don't really explain too much about like the origin of these alien life forms and the conceit of like you get splashed with the blood of an alien and like it get like a lot of it makes no sense or it's sort of high concept stuff. But I like the fact that they don't try to explain it. Like, let's just go with it. Let's just get onto it and get into what this film is about. Which is very anime, very like, there's a thing in Japan called light novels, which is basically like young adult novels with some illustrations. That's what it's actually originally a light novel, then they've done a manga and anime and different things. But that's very much anime. They don't need to explain that. Western audiences need everything they need to be handheld. They need everything to be explained. Japan, no, it's high concept. Let's go with it. We're more interested in the characters. All the performances are great. A lot of the people aren't like Bill Paxton and Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise. I think they're really good in their roles and stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I honestly did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. And I actually walked away. I was like, fuck, dude, that might be one I need to buy. Like, I might need to own that. I do want to talk about a movie that's the horror movie version of Groundhog's Day. And it's actually a really good movie. And that's Happy Death Day.
I really need to see it.
First of all, usually Blumhouse films come out and I'm like immediately like, I guess I'll watch this begrudgingly. But came out first, I was like, the concept sounded dumb. I was like, what? Fucking a great, really, really well done. Basically, it's like this girl wakes up on her birthday and she gets killed. And as soon as she gets killed, she wakes back up and she has to figure out who's killing her, why she's getting killed. And it's like this mystery. There's actually a sequel that's also really good, but takes the movie into a whole different direction. Apparently, the director wanted to make it a trilogy. He had a whole idea for a trilogy, and they first sounded like they weren't going to do it, but now I guess Blumhouse at first was like, no, we're not going to do a third one. And I guess people were such a fan of the sequel too, that I guess now they are talking about doing the trilogy. But either way, it's a really great movie. Definitely, if you haven't seen it, weirdly, it's really fun. It's actually legitimately pretty funny and entertaining. And like, again, for a little Blumhouse stupid modern horror movie, it's actually really good.
I'll check it out. I had my curiosity because it was a Groundhog's Day time loop horror conceit that got my interest. Another couple of films actually by the same director that I would like to mention.
Sure.
There are 2 entries in this on this list by Terry Gilliam, who is worthy himself of a full episode. It
took us this long to get to this.
Right. Well, we're coming to a close. We always like to save a couple of heavy hitters towards the end. And I don't know how much we'll talk about them here because we are towards the end. And I do legitimately think that we will do a Terry Gilliam episode in the future. So
absolutely, perhaps
we can be a little forgiven for not dwelling too long on the 2 movies, which are 12 Monkeys and Time Bandits, 2 of my favorite and one of my earliest introductions to time travel. In fact, now that I think about it, I think time travel might have been introduced to me through Time Bandits, because that's the first thing I remember really loving as a kid, prior to Back to the Future, even because it was on HBO constantly when I was growing up. Do you have any fond memories growing up with Time Bandits, or did you
Time Bandit. There's like a few movies, Time Bandits, Ice Pirates. There's a few films that were just constantly on TV all the time. And I mean, yeah, who doesn't love Time Bandits? I think with Time Bandits, it is for me specifically a little bit like rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia, as far as like it is like Time Bandits is as good or as interesting of a film as later career Terry Gilliam stuff, as good, even as good as stuff like Baron Munchausen, or at least as interesting. No, like I would say no.
I think it's at least on the level of Baron Munchausen.
I feel like it's definitely slower to me and maybe a little more clunky. Maybe I need to rewatch it. It has been a long time. And that's by no means a criticism. That's not saying if I don't enjoy it or not a good movie. I just feel like it's in my head. I consider it like early career Terry Gilliam before I really feel like he really found his voice, or really, maybe you're right. Maybe Baron Munchausen and it are on the same level, but like things like Brazil, like that end, like again, it's not fair. It's good movies. It doesn't matter. And it's definitely, even from the get-go, he definitely had a voice. He definitely had a distinct style. And, it's great. It's just weird that, like I said, it's same as you. Like, when we even talked about time travel movies, it was probably, in my head, it was probably Terminator, Back to the Future, and then Time Bandits. Because, again, as a kid, it was sort of, that was its whole, So I agree with you in that sense. That's why I thought it was so weird that we have talked about it until now. But weirdly, though, I don't have a relationship with 12 Monkeys. I saw it in the theater. I liked it. I know a lot of people love it. I thought Brad Pitt was great in it before Brad Pitt was Brad Pitt. But weirdly, it's not a movie I probably can. I don't know. I need to think. It was the other movie I wanted to revisit, and I have seen it multiple times. It's not like I haven't seen it. I just haven't seen it recently, I guess. But it's just not a movie that stayed with me in the same way it really connected with other people. I think I just need to rewatch it. Again, that's not saying it's a bad movie, but like it spawned a TV series. Like, I mean, it definitely is it left an indelible impression on a lot of people that I just don't feel like I connected with it the same way other people did. That's just a weird, like, again, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it's definitely it's a very interesting movie. The twists and turns and the performances and stuff. I will say though, personally speaking, films that take place or have a big thing to do with insane asylums kind of bug me out a little bit, which is weird because One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is in my top 30 movies. But yeah, I think maybe that it's also just kind of like gets under my skin a little bit, like for whatever reason, sort of triggers some anxiety in me. I have family members who have mental disorders, so I think it's always been a little bit of one of my triggers. But either way, it's still a great movie. And
yeah, great performances.
What about you, Deb? What is your feelings on those films?
Like I said, I grew up loving Time Bandits. The performances, it's 7 little people and 1 kid who were traveling through time because they stole God's time map in order to rob from various eras and plunder the riches and get out of there before they're caught and they can't be found. It's actually kind of all these little mini heists that they're perpetrating. They rob Napoleon. They rob Robin Hood. Sean Connery famously plays Agamemnon in the film. And it's a lot of actors just having a lot of fun. Cameos by all of his Terry Gilliam's Monty Python alums like John Cleese and Michael Palin are in the film. Shelley Duvall shows up in the movie. David Warner as the Supreme Darkness, the evil being. They never call him the devil.
Right, yeah.
But David Warner making his second appearance on the time travel list here. He's actually in a lot of ways the main reason to see it. 12 Monkeys, I was in high school when that came out, and I was a fan. It was something that I loved, and I would like to see it again myself at some point, which we will do when we do our Gilliam episode. And maybe I'll reserve more of my opinion on what I think of 12 Monkeys. But I will say that it's a really fantastic movie. It does twist the mind a little bit. It's loosely based on La Jetée, which a lot of people consider to be one of the most important time travel films ever made. And it's a French short film told entirely in still photographs. And that's available on YouTube if anybody wants to look up La Jetée. And if you're a fan of 12 Monkeys, I highly recommend it because you're going to see where a lot of that stuff comes from. There was a fun fact about Time Bandits that I was going to throw out real quick because I think it can kind of take us into something of at least our finale space here. All of the Time Bandits, all 7 of the little people, they did appear in another movie altogether right after, every single one of them. Can you guess which movie that was?
Right after?
Right around like within a year or so. Like my guess is that they probably did go straight to shooting it, and it took a while to release.
Oh shoot! All the little people. I mean, I would be a guess like Willow. I don't know.
Return of the Jedi.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I should have
every single Time Bandit. Yes, of course. Kenny Baker was one of the Time Bandits, and he's very famously he is the actor behind R2-D2 for all the original trilogy, and I believe for the prequels as well. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I think that he was able to attend the premiere of Force Awakens, but he did not play R2-D2 in that. But yeah, other Time Bandits went on to. I'm sure many of them were probably Ewoks. But
I wonder if they're also in Willow, though. I wonder if they're also in Willow.
Some of them are, I'm sure. One of them went on to be in Baron Munchausen. They went several different ways. There was even talk of a Time Bandits 2 at one point, but David Rappaport, I believe, is the name of the kind of unofficial leader of the Time Bandits. He unfortunately took his own life, and that was the end of any kind of sequel talk with Terry Gilliam. But this was well into running right up to about the time that he did 12 Monkeys. So perhaps 12 Monkeys was inspired in some way by the Time Bandits sequel in terms of him wanting to tell another time travel story. But the reason I bring it up as a connection to a space series is because there's another space series. Time travel has been a major part of its storytelling, and I'm talking about Star Trek. No surprises probably to anybody who listens to this. The original series, the original crew, went back in time at least 3 times. And then the original crew, if you're following the expanded storyline and getting out of the William Shatner era, the whole reason why the reboot can even exist is because they tied that into a time travel story. But I think when most people think of time travel and the original crew of the Starship Enterprise, they think of Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, which was directed by Leonard Nimoy in 1987 and is one of the most beloved of the Star Trek feature films. Growing up, I always thought it was really cool that Leonard Nimoy directed it. Shatner ended up directing 5 and Nimoy directed 3 and 4. But even as a kid, I remember that standing out is like, well, Harrison Ford never directed a Star Wars. How cool is that? So as a kid, I was very excited about this movie.
So in the drive-in, yeah, I mean, I would think I was too young initially for most of the start, like to really like, as I am now, much bigger Star Trek fan now than I was growing up, specifically of the original series. Next Generation is great, obviously, but there's something aesthetically about the original series, the 60s series, that just fucking speaks to me. But as a kid, I watched them all. We will saw them all in the theater. I even saw the Star Trek, the motion picture in the theater. I probably fell asleep within 5 minutes. Do remember seeing Wrath of Khan, though. Loved Wrath of Khan. I think I was probably, when did the motion picture come out? 80, 81? I was probably like a little fucking baby at that point.
I was say 79 or 80. If it was 80, then we would have talked about it in our 1980 episode. So
maybe I didn't. Maybe it was only Wrath of Khan I saw. I could have sworn I remember seeing. I don't know. Maybe I saw it. Maybe they re-released. I don't know. I just have a specific memory of.
I bet they did re-release it. That went on a lot more than people comprehend prior to VHS.
79. Yeah, I would have been 2 years old. So
before home video took over, though, things were frequently re-released, especially if they had a sequel coming. So you may have actually ended up seeing it, maybe not in 79, but seeing it just before Wrath of Khan came out.
I think I might have actually, believe it or not, I think I might have seen it at this place called Pizza Chalet. They actually used to show film, like weekends, they would project movies onto the wall. And I do remember I also saw WrestleMania 3 there and had some other weird memory. Anyways, not the point of this podcast. I will revisit my childhood memories. But yeah, I definitely think Voyage Home is one of the most entertaining, especially the Star Trek motion pictures have this weird cadence of like, even numbered ones were always the better ones. There's a weird history with those films, but yeah, Voyage Home it's known for like being very funny. Yeah, it takes place in contemporary San Francisco at the time. It's actually known for having one of the most authentic looking true punk rockers in cinema history at the time, because a lot of times like punks were used on screen to be like bad guys, or casting directors would be like, they're punks but they're like a motorcycle band. But that guy was a legit San Francisco crust punk, and like, and there's a whole scene where like he he's playing his loud punk rocker and the bus is upset, but even punk fans are like, it's a cool scene because like Spock gives him the old little nerve pinch, whatever.
You know why that scene exists? Star Trek IV was written by Nicholas Meyer, or Nicholas Meyer was one of the writers on it. There were several contributors. Nicholas Meyer, who also did Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and he did Time After Time, the film that we spoke about in the last episode, starring Malcolm McDowell and David Warner, also in San Francisco. When Nicholas Meyer wrote Time After Time, he originally wrote for there to be this sort of Jack the Ripper moment on the bus with someone blasting punk rock music against everybody's will, and it got trimmed, and he always felt slighted. He had to, as they say, kill your darlings for every writer. And so this was his way of getting that scene back in, was he wrote it as Spock giving the Vulcan neck pinch to the punk on the bus. And this was, Nimoy specifically made it funny because he felt that the last two had gotten so serious with the death of Spock and then the resurrection of Spock and the discovery and the death of Kirk's son. And it really was getting pretty heavy. And to see them go back, and as a kid, hearing them curse, hearing Captain Kirk say double dumbass to you to some guy on the streets, or just to even say the word bullshit, something about not Shatner saying it, but to hear Captain Kirk say bullshit as a kid, it was somehow very gratifying.
There was one, I know there's one point Bones goes to like this hospital and like he's shocked at like the medical condition, but he does something I can't remember. I wish I knew, but I remember the reason I was like, that's not, dude, that's so dangerous, or like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. And I remember being kind of upset about it recently, but
he ends up giving this random, like, this woman is told that she's not going to make it or something, and McCoy comes up behind and like gives her a pill, and then she just gets up and walks out. It's also the one with the nuclear vessels. Apparently, I think that was actually an ad lib. I think nuclear vessels was a Walter Koenig ad lib. James Doohan, who plays Scotty, got to give his favorite line in the whole series in it. Captain, there be whales here.
It's known for being the Star Trek about humpback whales, which is a weird subplot, but it's, it works. Like,
and Nimoy got in hot water for that too. A bunch of environmental agencies came after him because they felt that it was mistreatment of the whales in the movie, and Nimoy had to explain to them that 95% of the shots with the whales were animatronic whales. So no whales were actually harmed in the making of this movie. They did use some actual whales in the San Francisco harbor, but other than that, all the contained stuff, that was all artificial. Did you know who was going to originally play the role that Catherine Hicks ended up playing?
I do not know.
As the Earthling that has to link up with the crew of the Enterprise to save her beloved whales. That part was originally written for Eddie Murphy.
What?
Yes, this was
really.
Eddie Murphy was bringing a lot of money into Paramount, and so was Star Trek. And so, of course, naturally, they'd want to combine their two cash cows. And Murphy was on board. He was really excited to do a Star Trek. But when he found out he was playing an Earthling and not a actual member of Starfleet or an alien, he lost all interest. And I think Shatner had something to do with it being rewritten as a woman to give him someone to play off of. Because he had not really gotten that in the movies as he did in the TV show.
But even then, that was one of the things, even rewatching, where it's so kind of gross and unwarranted. Probably my least favorite aspect of the film is that forced relationship there. But yeah, it's such a fun watching them run around modern San Francisco trying to it's so. And that's the thing, is that cast was so fun. That the OG cast, who didn't really, they would have small bits here and there, like Walter Koenig would do a few things here and there, but they were really great actors and really great in their roles. And it was really fun getting to see them in a different context. It's weird though, because like you said, time travel is this thing that exists in science fiction that a lot of people have a problem with because they feel like it's easy. It's an easy fix. Like, oh, you wrote yourself into a corner, time travel. Yeah. And it's often seen as like a sort of a cheap cheat, for basically like lazy writing. One of the biggest, we're going to talk about time travel movies in the year 2021. We have to talk about the biggest franchise in film history, the Avengers films. And when it was announced that at the end of Infinity War, that after it got online that, it's going to be time travel, which they had been setting up for a long time. It wasn't like fans could see that. First of all, you have the Time Stone, which is a legitimate thing in the Marvel Universe. But when people it's going to be a time travel, people felt cheated. They're like, well, that's cheap and easy. But having said that, I think they actually pulled off time travel pretty well. I like that they sort of made it. Yeah. And I liked all the jokes about what do you know about time travel? Everything you know about time travel is from movies and shit, kind of explaining it. And then also, if you're Marvel Studios and you're really trying to grow your franchise beyond what you can currently do with your current actors, setting up that possibility of look, now you have fractured the timeline. Now you introduce the multiverse. Now you have an infinite playing field, which DC has done since day one, but to mixed results.
Yeah.
And it's really smart. It's a smart thing as a film company to do that. And I do think, even though, again, I was one of the people really time travel out of the blue, that's so cheap, but they did it well. And I feel like I was emotionally invested in the film. I was a kid at 12 years old who was literally dreaming of an Avengers movie. I literally reading Avengers comic books and being like, man, I would love to see this, in a movie, but thinking that's never going to happen. And getting to see it in the theaters, it was still, to this day, is still very trippy, because it was a thing I dreamed about for decades, and then finally really came true. And not only did it come true, but some of the most successful films ever made. Yeah. So you did see it though, Devin? You did see Endgame?
Oh yeah. I had to. That was something. You were just handed a ticket if you were standing around in when was that, 2019 or 500 years ago, whenever it was. Yeah. And I've kept up, part of why I haven't gotten into the DC universe and some of these other big budget things is because very early on, for no other reason beyond just it seemed like a good idea at the time, I don't go in for a lot of sequels. Even something like John Wick, which I absolutely loved. I've never seen the sequels just because, like I said, I have a growing list of stuff over the course of the last 150 years. I would love to get to John Wick 2. It's not in my top 100 to get to. And so I've had to kind of choose what I'm going to get myself invested in. And I did get myself invested in the Marvel Universe. There's generally things that I can love about even some of the bad ones. I am at this point now that they're spreading into television and everything. It's simultaneously more exciting and less interest somehow. Because
I understand.
Yeah, I want to know how WandaVision does. I'm interested in WandaVision. It seems very interesting how they're going to do that. I'm sure there will be time travel involved in WandaVision because it just looks like from the commercials that they're at least time traveling through different sitcom tropes. I have no invested interest in a Hawkeye series or any of that. So while I have made sure that I have been a part of every part of the MCU so far, I think I'm tapping out and I'm now switching over to, well, if it interests me, I'll check it out. And if it doesn't interest me, I don't care anymore. I think that's the healthier way to be about some of these series that are kind of expanding to a level. Look, they already wanted me to go and see 3 Marvel movies in the theater every year as I increasingly get to an age in which I'm lucky if I see 4 movies in the theater at all. So I don't know what that extra movie was going to be. Usually it's been a Star Wars movie lately, and I'm getting really sick of it, really tired of that as kind of what cinema can be or what cinema is. But that being said, I have to give them credit where credit is due. It was highly enjoyable. I really loved Avengers Endgame. I think any movie that costs close to like $400 or $500 million has to, by its nature, be deprived of a rating star for me, because no movie is worth the amount that would save a small country. Like, do I love Avengers Endgame more than I love Zimbabwe? No, I'd rather have Zimbabwe. Please, no mail from Zimbabwe. I don't know enough about you in reality to make that analogy, but you get my point. I do think that it's
theoretically
overblown.
You love Zimbabwe more. Yeah.
So much money has been literally wasted on the Marvel universe that I do have a little bit of animosity. But talking about it strictly artistically, they pulled it off. And I will say Captain America, based on the Rip Van Winkle structure, is a time travel story itself. Right. So the whole Captain America series got some time travel, which is why it makes so much sense to me that his story, or at least the Chris Evans version of Captain America, the Steve version of Captain America, wraps up as a time travel wrap up, I think is perfect for that character. I don't care what kind of inconsistencies it creates in the actual universe, because you know what? None of them exist. So let's not worry about whether they can exist in that timeline. But another series that I have also loved and has had a very fascinating evolution over time. Evolution, pun not intended, but I wish I had made it intended. The evolution of the Planet of the Apes movies, which is also, at least the first and the third, and elements of the second, been a time travel story.
But in a weird way, because it does open up, like, what is, obviously it's the end, like what you really find out is the end of the first film, where like, oh, you're not on a different planet, you're just on Earth. Yeah,
perfect Rod Serling ending. Rod Serling wrote the script, and I know it's based on a book, but the book had a different ending.
Yeah, it did. That's what I've heard. I've heard the book is actually really great, and I've always wanted to read it.
Oh, I've read it like 3 times. It's great science fiction. Rod Serling's version of this, and he's famously gone on note saying that he wrote like 30 or 40 versions of it before he finally gave it back to the studio and said, you're going to have to find somebody else. And that other person, I can't remember the name right now, but that other person contributed heavily to what we ended up seeing on the screen. Elements of Serling's version did follow through, though, like such as the ending. But Rod Serling's version, just like the book, had them living in an actual civilization with cities and technology. And it was the other writer who made them more primitive and living in huts. And so who knows what Rod Serling's movie really would have been like, but his stamp is still all over this movie. And it really does feel like an extended Twilight Zone. Absolutely.
Charlton Heston basically saying, like, what's been a minute for them has been a lifetime, back on Earth. And it opens with basically Charlton Heston literally saying, like, it basically gives away the ending, like, right at the beginning. And I didn't even realize that until recently watching it. Like, oh yeah, they foreshadows it right now, literally the opening scene. But it's still it's one of the most memorable endings of all time. And it is technically, but again, space travel and the difference between, traveling at light speed is that is honestly the most real version of time travel we'll ever experience, is what astronauts experience. But it is, it has to be discussed because it's, like I said, it's a huge franchise, especially at the time. It was the biggest. It was
pre-Star Wars. This was
pre-Star Wars.
For Planet of the Apes, there have been 5 original movies, an original television series, an original cartoon, then the Tim Burton remake, followed by a rebooted trilogy that really stands on its own 2 legs without referencing the originals at all. In fact, the Tim Burton remake is very far removed from anything that the originals did as well. And that's not to even mention all the the books, just like there have been 1,000,007 Star Trek books. There have been 1,000,007 different stories of Dr. Zaius and Cornelius and all of that. And none of those really reaching from the source novel. Like those are reaching for the movies specifically. A lot of material has come from Planet of the Apes, and it really was the Avengers of its time. Like that was the universe that people were following. And it had an interesting progression. Heston goes into the future to discover the Planet of the Apes. In the second one, another astronaut has been sent to look for him. And in part 3, after they destroy the Planet of the Apes, some of the heroes from the first movie, Cornelius and Zira, are catapulted back in time in the same spaceship that Charlton Heston had back into the 70s, so that you can see the honest progression of how Earth became the Planet of the Apes, which is a great conceit. And it always surprises me that whenever they made another sequel, they said, well, we didn't plan to do another sequel, but it did so well. And like, how did that, with the exception of maybe the fifth one, they all seem to follow a progression that seems as if it was predestined.
I think the third one's probably the most fun and the most...
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
1 and 3. I can live without some of the other ones, but 1 and 3 are
Beneath the Planet of the Apes is fine. I agree 100%, especially having just even... I'm in the middle of rewatching all 5 of the originals. But yeah, the second one's fine. It's not, I don't dislike it, but...
And 4 is fucking rough, man. You're going to enjoy getting into Conquest.
Well, I don't know if you showed it to me or Casey showed it to me, but I know I've seen all the first 4. I don't remember if I've seen the 5th one, the original 5th one. It's been a long ass time.
You'll like the 5th one because Paul Williams is one of the orangutans.
That's yes, yeah. I know. It's funny though because he looks so much like Dr. Zaius. Like Dr. Zaius looks like Paul. Like I think that in my head, I think somebody was watching that being like, that just looks like Paul Williams, the monkey makeup. I say that lovingly. I love Paul Williams. I love him to death. I feel like we can't talk about the movie. We can't talk about time travel without mentioning the movie Antiviral, but you also can't talk about Antiviral without. Anyways, I'll just say it's. I just want to mention it. 2 movies though I do want to talk about real quick because they're indie movies, like more independent films that sort of took on the concept of time travel. One is a Spanish film called Time Crimes. Have you ended up watching it, Devin?
I started watching it based on your recommendation. I really planned to watch it in between the last episode and this, but I kept on getting really engrossed in this new TV show called Insurrection that's been on TV the last couple of days. I don't know if you saw any of that. And so it kind of distracted me from, like, when it came time to watch a movie, I started watching Time Crimes and I really appreciated where it was going and I will return to it. But at a certain point, I just needed to relax and I put on a movie I got for my birthday, which is The Last Starfighter. It has nothing to do with time travel, but really hit the spot in terms of being an escape from...
It's basically using time travel to sort of tell a thriller. It's an interesting movie. Is it a brilliant, perfect movie? No, it's an indie movie, but it just some of it you go, oh, this is where I think it is. There are a few surprises along the way, which is sort of like, oh, that's unexpected. But it's definitely an interesting little movie. I remember when it came out, I didn't see it right away, but I heard all these great things about it. So when I finally saw it, I was like, yeah, that was good. I think maybe it was like overhyped to me a little bit because people were saying it was so brilliant. And I was like, yeah, it was good. I don't know if I think it's the best movie ever made, but it's definitely a very unique time travel movie. It's definitely doing something different from others. And
yeah. There's been a couple of names tied to that, by the way, for an American remake.
There's been talking about remakes since 2012, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anything is actively on the fire for it right now. But at various points, David Cronenberg wanted to do a remake of Time Crimes, and Tom Cruise really wants to play the lead role for whoever ends up doing Time Crimes.
Which, if you've never seen the movie and you know the original Spanish actor, could not be more different from fucking Tom Cruise.
And that actor also wrote and directed the movie.
The other one I have to talk about, because it's probably the single most pure, quote unquote, time travel movie. It's the movie that you'll hear like certain amount of, like, whether they're science nerds or certain segment of film fans, you have to talk about the movie Primer.
I saw that in the theater.
Because Primer makes fucking 12 Monkeys seem like a Mr. Bean sketch. Like, it's
seriously,
it's so hard to fucking actually understand what's going on. You need to basically watch it like 6 times and write everything down. But it's a very complicated movie. But it is, a lot of people posit, like, the single most realistic concept of what time travel could be, like how it would work and how it would be invented in somebody's garage. Like,
exactly. No corporation's going to put up the money to, like, invent time travel. There's no gain in it, and so many
the fact that
moral and ethical pitfalls that are tied into it. when and if time travel is ever invented, I guarantee you the first time machine is going to come from a garage. And that's
and the thing is, in the movie, they're not even trying to invent time travel. They're trying to like find a way to eliminate like mass or weight or something for basically to make, shipping cheaper. And then they end up finding out that they have time travel as like a side effect. The thing that I think is really interesting though is like the limitations of time travel. The fact that they need this box and they can only go, you can't go into like 300 years of the past because the box wasn't invented then. So the earliest you can travel back is to the first day the box was invented, but it's how they use it. And then the whole concept of us creating like the safety, like.
Yeah, they have a safety box built somewhere else.
Yeah,
in case
the one guy.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's one of those movies, it's smart and it's very interesting. It's one of those movies I feel like where sometimes the conceit or are the characters that interesting. I do feel like the writer and director made a point of making kind of three-dimensional characters, very flawed characters, and obviously there's some ethical questions in the movie. Even on a second viewing, you're like, wait, what? What did that have to do with this? And why did this happen? And it's one of the things, it's like, it's not for casual film fans, but if you're talking about time travel films, you have to talk about it because, it's literally like the time travel. For a lot of people, it's considered like the best time travel movie just because of the complications of time travel.
Yeah.
And creating paradoxes and stuff. So
it earns that reputation pretty honestly, too. The guy who wrote it and directed it and plays the main guy, one of the two main guys, it really is a two-fister kind of movie. He actually does have like a background in this kind of science, and he had never seen science in general treated as science on screen. It actually, in a weird way, it works in the favor of making this a great movie, but it actually works against making it a memorable movie because the dialogue is so much in the jargon of not only the terms that home scientists would use, but just even kind of like the cadence and the humor and like everything is kind of based on these guys who in real life are not known for their pithy comments and things. And so what you end up with is a lot of very technically heavy dialogue that it does not lend itself to get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty apes, or double dumbass to you, or where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah, exactly.
The things that the time travelers say in other movies that everybody quotes, Primer by its own nature cannot have dialogue like that. It has to be clinical dialogue. So there's nothing for a regular audience to grab onto. But if you're an indie fan, this is a fantastic movie, and it's an inspiration to anybody who's ever wanted to make a movie because the budget was about $10,000. And the idea that not only could you make a sci-fi movie or make a movie for $10,000, but make a sci-fi movie, and on top of that, make it a time travel sci-fi movie, it's just insane. And just on achievement level alone, this movie is notable and should always be
well said,
remembered. Even if you're shooting with your iPhone, if you're making something that you expect to play in the theaters, it's going to cost more than $10,000.
For real.
So yeah, very inspired by that. And I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't sure if we were going to get a chance to even talk about Primer because it's such a niche fan base. Yeah. But I saw that in New York with my dad. My dad and I both wanted to go see it because we wanted to see how this $10,000 was spent. And I think it was spent very wisely. And he enjoyed it as well. Another kind of oddball kind of one that I'm going to bring this up. You can bring up whatever you want. I'm going to make this my last.
No, I'm done. You can, yeah. I'll let you end it.
There's a movie that I had seen a long time ago, and then I rewatched it again in the process of researching this and realized just what a technical feat it was. And it's a movie that gets no real respect in cinematic circles, although it does in literature circles. And that is Slaughterhouse-Five, based on Kurt Vonnegut Jr.'s novel Slaughterhouse-Five, which I just have to say, great title for a book, great title for a movie coming out when it came out. That title has aged worse than it ever could have imagined. Because if you tell people nowadays you should see Slaughterhouse-Five, not only are they going to think you're talking about a slasher movie, they're going to think you're talking about like the well-worn fifth entry of a slasher series. So yeah, very unfortunately titled with 2020 hindsight. Slaughterhouse-Five actually refers to the POW camp that the main character is in for portions of the movie, which was inspired by Kurt Vonnegut's actual experiences in a POW camp when he was captured at the Battle of the Bulge. And as a prisoner in a POW camp, he also experienced firsthand the horrors of the bombing of Dresden. which also becomes a part of this story. The reason why it's a time travel story is because the main character in Slaughterhouse-Five is living his life out of order. They allude at some points there may be trauma that he experienced, like blunt force trauma when he gets injured at a certain point that maybe caused this. There's also ways that you could imagine it was created extraterrestrially, but somehow this guy is living his life in different sections at different times. And at one moment he's in the POW camp, and then inexplicably he's living for a period later in his life when he's married with children, and then suddenly he's back as a child with his, in his hometown. The way that it switches back and forth to tell the full story of one man. And by the end, this is not really a spoiler alert because the book's been around forever, and honestly, most people know this. But in the end, you find out that this character gets abducted by aliens and lives on basically an interplanetary zoo as an example of the human species, along with Valerie Perrine of Superman and Lenny fame, who is a Playboy centerfold in the movie and actress who the character has fantasized about in his life on Earth, and now is suddenly his companion on this alien planet, living his life in different stages. So there's no time travel in the sense that there's no time machine. And I think that anybody who's interested in screenwriting and in particular film editing, this should be like required watching for anybody out there. It came out in the 70s. It was directed by George Roy Hill. Doesn't really have a star-studded cast. It really exists kind of in its own universe. But I would be letting myself down if I didn't mention Slaughterhouse-Five in this conversation, because I really don't know where else it's going to fit in the nature of cinema to begin with, outside of a time travel movie. And
or an alien abduction film.
Yeah, because they're not malicious aliens. He's not being tortured by the aliens. He's not being probed. In fact,
no probing.
It seems like he can ask for whatever he wants, and as long as what he wants isn't to be let out of his cage, kind of gets it. So he becomes quite comfortable living that life, which draws parallels to how he had to live as a POW for a number of years. You can tell it's a very personal story for Vonnegut, and Vonnegut, who was cantankerous, to put it nicely, and for some reason his only film appearance was in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah, which is insane. Growing up, I thought that was an actor playing Kurt Vonnegut until I realized, no, that's really Kurt Vonnegut, who's in this fucking Rodney Dangerfield movie. Weird as fuck, but genius.
But he has gone on record as saying that this is the only adaptation of his work that he endorses. He believed that this film captured the purpose of the novel. And considering how personal this novel is to him, I would say that that's saying something.
Isn't there in development, or weren't they talking about making a new adaptation, I thought?
They'd be stupid not to be. I don't know if they are, but this would be...
I read that a long time ago.
Someone would be stupid to not try to turn this into a Netflix or a Hulu series.
I was going to say like a streaming original, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But have you ever seen the film?
No, I know the book really well. I have multiple friends who that's their favorite book of all time. So
I might have to get you a copy of this movie because I want your opinion on it. It's because you and I both love 70s movies, and it's so 70s. But at the same time, it is so outside of anything else. So, and I love that kind of uniqueness. It's definitely not cookie cutter.
Well, I will say though, like that's an interesting one to end it on because it's definitely the odder end of a time travel movie. The thing is, like, once again, when we set out to record these episodes, like, you never realize how many films there are in the world, how many films have been made, but how many really interesting films have been made, and how many there actually are worth any of the movies. I feel like pretty much we could have talked about tonight. We could have talked about for 2 hours just on the single movie.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I feel like, if anything, like, as much as I feel like we, when we talk about these things, I'm sure you have the same goal to get people excited about movies that you've watched and that you want to see expand people's horizons if maybe they haven't seen the movie. But every one of these episodes, I always learn something about a film, whether it's a film I've learned a tidbit or a history about a film I've seen that I'm a fan of, or like in this case, getting excited about a movie I haven't seen. In this case, an adaptation of a classic American novel. So I'm excited, and I will say, if you're listening to this, if I'm sure we missed some of your favorite science fiction time travel films.
Sorry, fans of Hot Tub Time Machine,
Exactly. I was gonna say I almost there was a few I almost threw under the bus, but I was like, let's keep it positive. But yeah, I mean, hopefully like you enjoyed this episode. But again, if you feel like we missed any, let us know. Like, and hey, look, if you're a fan of The Fountain, that's fine. You can be a fan. But if you are a fan, if I'm wrong, why don't you leave us a comment on our social media? Devin, where is our social media?
You can find us on Facebook and Twitter for as long as those things exist. But we love you, and we want you to subscribe and like us and comment.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye.